There's a holy tension rising. And if you're sensitive to the Spirit, you've already felt it. Not anxiety, not confusion, but a deep, unshakable knowing that something ancient inside of you is stirring. Something heaven has been guarding until the time was right. You've been walking through the rooms that feel too small for the weight you carry, nodding through conversations that no longer feed your purpose, feeling detached from the noise that used to entertain you. That's not burnout. That's a divine indicator that the version of you they tried to box in is no longer available. Could it be that what you thought was delay was actually God preserving you for something greater? You were never called to blend in. You were never designed to be digestible. And now, what was hidden is beginning to rise, and with it, your most dangerous power. But dangerous doesn't mean destructive. It means refined, untouched, surrendered, the kind of power that doesn't beg to be noticed, but shifts the entire atmosphere when it enters. You've been quiet, but you haven't been passive. You've been patient, but not paralyzed. You've been becoming, and every delay was divine. If this word feels like it's reading you more than you're reading it, pause right now and drop 777 in the comments. That's not just a number. That's prophetic completion. That's your way of saying, I didn't break, I was being built. You are the evidence that silence was never weakness. It was strategy. And to everyone who has sown into this sacred space through super thanks, I don't just thank you, I honor you. Your support isn't just keeping this message alive, it's fueling freedom. You're investing in deliverance, clarity, and bold, unfiltered truth that sets captives free. You're not forgotten, you're foundational. What if your quiet generosity has been unlocking doors in the spirit that even you don't know about yet? And now, as we shift into the heart of what God is awakening, I need you to lock in, because what comes next isn't a sermon, it's a summons, a commissioning, a spiritual instruction for those who've been refined in fire and are ready to carry glory with weight and precision. This isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. This isn't about performance. It's about presence. You've reached the point where survival is no longer your goal. Impact is, and the version of you that's emerging now, it doesn't owe anyone an explanation. It just moves in divine timing, speaks when led, and leaves a trail of breakthrough behind. Are you ready to carry a level of authority that doesn't need to announce itself, but still shifts every room you walk into? So, stay grounded, keep your spirit open, because what I'm about to release next isn't just revelation, it's your moment of ignition. Let's begin. God's chosen ones. It's time to activate your most dangerous power. You've been walking through rooms like a ghost, present but hidden. But what if the silence wasn't weakness, but incubation? What if the very thing you thought made you invisible was heaven's strategy to make you untouchable power? As the world defines it, is loud, aggressive, and flaunting. It's the CEO yelling in the boardroom, the influencer boasting numbers, the politician commanding attention. But ask yourself, Why do so many of these powerful people crumble the moment applause fades? Why does their confidence collapse when the lights go out? Could it be that what the world calls power is actually performance dressed as purpose? True power never needs applause. Real strength is the ability to move in rooms without needing to dominate them. As Proverbs 17:27 reminds us, the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered. This most dangerous power isn't the kind that screams. It's the kind that listens, discerns, and shifts the entire spiritual climate without saying a word. Why do you think Jesus, when confronted by Pilate, John 19:9, didn't fight back with armies or titles? He stood silent, not because he lacked authority, but because he embodied it. That kind of power confuses the world. It doesn't fit the algorithm of fear, ego, or display. Now, here's something to consider. If power truly belonged to those who dominate, how did Esther, a young orphan girl, shift an entire empire's fate? Was it her crown or her courage? Was it her title or her timing in divine alignment? Esther 4:14 reveals this secret weapon. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. Are you beginning to see why they underestimated you? The truth is, you never needed to fight for a throne. They were intimidated because you carry a kingdom. You didn't need a crown to govern atmospheres. That's why you made them nervous without even raising your voice. Like a dormant volcano that never warmed the landscape before erupting. Your presence is not loud, it's seismic. Could it be that your very calmness under pressure was a declaration of spiritual superiority? Consider the story of Ruth, a foreigner, a widow, a nobody by societal standards. And yet, her loyalty and humility positioned her in the lineage of the Messiah. She didn't grasp for power. She aligned with divine timing. That's what you've done too. While others scrambled for influence, you cultivated integrity. While they weaponized noise, you became fluent in obedience. Does the name Gregory Boyle sound familiar? He's a Jesuit priest and founder of Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, which helps rehabilitate gang members. He once said, "You stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop." He doesn't preach with intimidation, but transforms lives through presence. Isn't that what you've been doing all along? Showing up in shadows, altering atmospheres, not by force, but by truth. A girl who was born in the slums of Nairobi. Everyone counted her out, too quiet, too fragile, too plain. But she spent years studying medicine by candlelight. Later, pioneering a rural health network across East Africa. They said she lacked power, but she was constructing something eternal. Not everyone sees the blueprint, but heaven does. Could your path be more sacred than it seems? Your nature mirrors that of the redwood forest. These ancient trees stand towering in majesty not because they race, but because their roots are interlocked underground. Miles wide, unseen, but immovable. Power like that doesn't perform, it prevails. Do you now realize the danger you pose to darkness when you stand in stillness? With divine grounding, the enemy never feared your words. He feared your awakening, because once you understand your internal arsenal peace under pressure, purpose in pain, strategy in suffering. You become impossible to contain. You're not just surviving chaos, you're recalibrating it. You're not throwing stones, you're building sanctuaries. You're not demanding attention, you're becoming undeniable. What kind of power can dismantle manipulation, outlast betrayal, and remain unshaken in storms? It's the kind born from alignment, not ambition. That chosen one is your most dangerous power, and it's time to activate it. They told you to chase after it, to grind for it, to wear it like a badge and flaunt it like a trophy. But have you ever paused to ask who handed you that definition of power in the first place? What if their standard was never designed to empower you, but to exhaust you? What if the real trap wasn't failure, but false success dressed in diamonds and applause? This world has taught you to crave visibility over value. But isn't it strange that the more someone chases the spotlight, the more they seem to lose their substance? Why do so many burn out at the height of fame? Why does the applause sound hollow once they realize it doesn't fill their soul? You've seen it. Luxury without legacy, noise without depth, charisma with no character. Could that be the very system you were born to disrupt? Jeremiah 9:23-24 declares, "Let not the wise boast of their wisdom, or the strong boast of their strength, or the rich boast of their riches. But let the one who boasts boast about this, that they have the understanding to know me." That's not just a warning, it's a recalibration. When power is measured by bank accounts, titles, or attention, it becomes fragile, desperate to maintain illusions. But when it's rooted in identity and divine intimacy, it becomes unshakable. They never taught you that. They taught you to perform. But what if your silence was more disruptive than their shouting? What if your stillness was a warning siren in the spirit? You weren't made to chase. You were designed to carry. That's why even your composure is a weapon. You are not reacting to their chaos. You're becoming a command center of clarity. How else could Daniel sleep peacefully in a den of lions? Daniel 6:22. Because true power doesn't panic. It knows who sent it. Cardinal Robert Sarah, a Guinean theologian and former prefect of the Congregation for Divine Worship, once said, "Silence is more powerful than all the words in the world, because it is the dwelling place of God." His life has been a testament to the strength of stillness. He never built fame through noise. He carried authority through discipline. Isn't that what you've been learning in secret? That stillness can be more threatening than rebellion. Look at Elijah. After all the fire and noise on Mount Carmel, Kings 19, when he fled into despair, God didn't show up in the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but in a still, small voice. That's what's been forming in you. Not a shout, but a shaking whisper. Not a wave, but a deep undercurrent. Not a spotlight, but a gravitational pull. Let me tell you about a man named Khalid. He used to be a high-powered attorney in Manhattan, known for his sharp tongue and designer lifestyle. But beneath the prestige, his soul was hollow. One day, after a silent collapse in his office, he left everything, moved to a quiet village, and started counseling youth who had no fathers. Now, He walks into rooms with no title, but carries a peace that silences tempers. No one introduces him as powerful, but when he speaks, even cynics sit still. Can you see the paradox yet? Real power doesn't beg to be noticed. It just transforms the atmosphere. And your inner life is like a glacier. On the surface, it seems serene, unmoving, but beneath the waterline, it is vast, ancient, and capable of shifting the course of continents. Power like yours isn't crafted in the spotlight. It's sculpted in the shadows. While others parade crowns, you carry commandments. While they beg for likes, you build legacies. Could that be the very reason why the enemy tried to distract you with external validation, so you'd never unlock the power quietly rising inside you? You are the storm behind the curtain, not the circus on the stage. You were never called to juggle for their approval. You were called to dismantle their illusions. And now that you've activated that vibration, the crowns they chase have no hold on you, because your throne was never built with noise. It was forged in fire, covered in silence, and anointed by the hand of heaven. And that, chosen one, is why you've become untouchable. They told you to gear up like everyone else, to put on the layers of protection, status, and performance the world celebrates. They said your survival depended on how much armor you could wear, how many credentials you could carry, how intimidating you could look. But, chosen one, when did you start believing you needed to look dangerous in order to be dangerous? Why do you think David didn't take Saul's armor? Was it recklessness or revelation? In 1 Samuel 17:39, David said, "I cannot go in these, because I am not used to them." He wasn't rejecting armor, he was rejecting imitation. Because when you know what you carry, you don't borrow the world's tactics, you don't mimic their noise to express your strength. That's the kind of internal power that shifts battlefields without shouting. Have you realized yet that what made you powerful wasn't the way you entered, but the belief you carried inside? You never needed permission to be effective. You needed alignment to be unstoppable. While others suited up for performance, you calibrated for purpose. Like David, you carried something invisible but undeniable. He didn't fight with strength, he fought with strategy. A shepherd's sling in his hand, yes, but a warrior's faith in his spirit. That's why one stone was enough. Not because it was magic, but because his belief was magnetic. Could it be that the things they mocked about you are the very things that make you lethal? Maya Moore, the world-class WNBA star who paused her career at its peak to fight for a wrongly imprisoned man, once said, "My purpose is bigger than basketball." She didn't need a trophy in her hand to prove her power. She had faith in something deeper, and it redefined justice. What's louder than fame conviction? What's stronger than force purpose on assignment? Could that be the kind of inner gravity you're finally starting to recognize in yourself? Here's what they didn't anticipate. You weren't designed to blend in. You were engineered to break through. And you never had to shout to be heard, like Amara, a young woman from Morocco whose village ridiculed her for never marrying, never conforming. They didn't know she was secretly building an educational program for girls that would spread across 7 provinces. No funding, no praise, just vision, grit, and God. She didn't come armed with influence. She came forged in faith. That's what belief does. It draws power not from noise, but from depth. It doesn't ask for validation. It executes with precision. When you move with belief, things shift before you even speak. You've seen it. People sense something when you walk in, not because you're loud, but because your spirit announces what your voice doesn't. And now you know. It's not armor that makes you invincible. It's clarity. Jesus didn't ride into Jerusalem on a war horse. He came in on a donkey, meek, intentional, and anointed. Matthew 21:5. Why? Because he never needed theatrics to fulfill prophecy. Could that be the blueprint for your next season? You're not here to impress. You're here to impact. And impact doesn't always look impressive until it's irreversible. You've been like the falcon, not the peacock. The falcon doesn't dazzle with feathers. It flies high, silent, and strikes with unmatched accuracy. No waste, no flare, just focus. And that's what makes it lethal. Could that be the posture you're stepping into now? Fewer words, sharper vision. The truth is, when you believe, mountains don't just move, they crumble. Giants don't just fall, they flee. And doubt, it loses its grip before it can even speak. That's what activated belief looks like. You don't need to look intimidating when your frequency makes darkness tremble. You weren't meant to dominate the way they do. You were meant to disrupt everything they thought was untouchable. So, chosen one, don't ever mistake silence for weakness. Don't confuse subtlety with softness. You're not missing armor. You're moving in authority. And now that your belief has been sharpened, your presence has become a strategy. You are not what they expected. You are what they fear. Precise, focused, untamed belief. And that is thunder cloaked in flesh. They say it like an insult. Oh, that's just spiritual talk. As if faith and power are confined to pulpits or poetry. But have you noticed the loudest mockers are often the most bound? Why do they roll their eyes at inner healing, yet stay trapped in the same patterns year after year? Why do they laugh at words like energy, discernment, or alignment, yet can't explain why their lives stay stuck on repeat? This isn't fluff. This is fire. You've lived it. You've walked into rooms where chains snapped, not because of what you said, but because of what you carried. You've escaped situations you had no logical way out of, because your alignment whispered louder than their manipulation. That's not just spiritual. That's supernatural warfare in practical motion. James 2:17 says, "Faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead." Your belief didn't stay in your head. It leaked into your decisions, shaped your survival, and rewrote your future. Look again. The breakup didn't destroy you. It redirected you. The betrayal didn't shatter you. It revealed your discernment. The loss didn't finish you. It fed your fire. Could that be why your quiet obedience has been more effective than their loud declarations? The story of Paul and Silas in Acts 16:25-26 says it all. At midnight in prison, after being beaten, they sang, and suddenly the prison shook, doors flew open, and chains fell. Not because they screamed, but because they aligned. Does that still sound like just talk? What if your praise, your stillness, your spiritual clarity has already been cracking open? The cells you didn't even know you were in. Take Jan Levanzant, a spiritual teacher and author whose own life was marked by childhood abuse, divorce, and bankruptcy. She doesn't preach positivity for likes. She rebuilt her life not through platitudes, but through power that started in the soul. She once said, "Your willingness to look at your darkness is what empowers you to change." Can you recognize that kind of power now? When it doesn't just inspire, it liberates Marcel, a young man from the outskirts of Florence, who was told he would never rise beyond his station, raised by a father who left and a mother who was silenced by grief. Marcel grew up in spiritual confusion and survival mode, but something shifted at 17. He began journaling his dreams. 10 years later, he now runs a retreat center for orphaned boys that's transformed hundreds of lives. He never studied psychology. He just learned to listen to the whisper of God, and that guidance became a map. Power didn't make him louder. It made him accurate. Isn't that the evidence they keep ignoring? You're like tectonic plates beneath the ocean. Nobody sees the shift, but one small move in alignment causes earthquakes on the surface. Power that moves quietly causes permanent reformation. Your energy isn't emotional hype. It's rooted, ancient, assigned, and that's why rooms shift when you enter. Even when you don't say a word, some still mock you. They laugh at your boundaries, scoff at your discernment, and label you too deep. But isn't it funny how they also return to you when they need clarity? They can't explain it, but your frequency exposes their fiction. That's the fruit of the power within you. It doesn't demand a microphone. It just dismantles lies by standing still in truth. You didn't fight for control. You became the control. You didn't demand space. Space formed around you. You didn't scream for healing. Healing walked in with you. That's not poetry. That's prophecy, fulfilled through presence. And the more they dismiss it, the more exposed their chains become. Because what they don't feel is what they've never carried. And what they've never carried is exactly what you were born to release. So, chosen one, stop questioning if what you have is real enough. It's not only real, it's a revolution. And the only reason they can't recognize it is because they've never been what you are. You weren't designed to sidestep shadows. You weren't made to negotiate with fear or tiptoe through trauma. There is a kind of light that doesn't avoid the night. It transforms it. Have you ever asked yourself why darkness tries so hard to make you doubt your own glow? Why do storms seem to gather the moment you take a step forward? Could it be because your presence threatens the atmosphere more than you know? This world will whisper that playing small is noble, that staying silent makes you wise, that shrinking is survival. But the truth is, how many crowns were lost because someone mistook compliance for peace? Chosen one. You were not born to yield. You were born to confront. That's why the fire didn't burn you. It bowed to you. That's why the pit didn't swallow you. It revealed your roar. You didn't blend into darkness. You bent its shape. Psalm 91:13 declares, "You will tread upon the lion and the cobra. You will trample the great lion and the serpent." The ones heaven sends into the fire don't come out the same. They come out as evidence. You are walking proof that unshakable light doesn't retreat when shadows rise. You confront what others collapse beneath. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your volume, but your vibration. Think about the three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when they refused to bow to the golden image. They were thrown into the fire. Yet, Daniel 3:25 reveals the miracle. I see 4 men loose, walking in the fire, and the fourth looks like a son of the gods. Their refusal didn't lead to ruin. It summoned divine reinforcement. Could it be that your resistance is what's activating your covering now? Let's speak of power made manifest in real lives. Consider Malala Yousafzai, a young Pakistani girl who was shot for advocating girls' education under Taliban rule. She didn't just survive, she stood taller. She didn't curse the darkness, she lit a movement. She once said, "When the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful." Isn't that exactly what you've been doing? Defying forces that expected your silence? Desmond Doss, a medic during World War II, who refused to carry a weapon due to his beliefs. They mocked him, threatened him. But on the battlefield, he saved 75 men without ever firing a bullet. The enemy didn't fear his strength. They feared his stand. That kind of refusal disrupts darkness more than any sword. You've done the same. Like Eleni, a single mother of 3 from a village in northern Greece. Everyone said she should remarry quickly, settle down, stop dreaming. But she knew what God had whispered in the night. She started a quiet ministry, rescuing women from trafficking routes through the Balkan corridor. No headlines, no followers, just footsteps that pierced hell itself. Some said she was naive, but evil knew her by name. Tariq, once a gang leader in Manchester, now mentoring the very youth he used to recruit. His friends laughed when he chose peace, but the ones who truly trafficked in darkness began to fear him. Not for his fists, but for his clarity. Because when someone's light has been refined in warfare, their presence is no longer personal. It's prophetic. You are like volcanic rock under the earth, slowly pressurized, compacted, refined over years of heat and resistance. When it rises, it forms whole islands. That's what your journey has been doing, creating new ground where only destruction once existed. Or like the deep-sea anglerfish, thriving in pressure so intense most creatures can't survive. Its light isn't for decoration, it's for navigation. You've learned to shine where others drown. This is what the enemy feared, not your voice, but your endurance, not your sword, but your refusal to kneel. Darkness thrives on intimidation, but when it saw you rise again and again, it lost control. Have you realized how many of their weapons lost their grip the moment you stopped apologizing for your fire? You were never fragile. You were forged. You weren't made to dodge warfare. You were designed to shift it. So now, chosen one, every chain they used to bind you has become the path beneath your feet. Every curse they threw became the compost for your authority. You didn't walk around the fire. You walked through it. And it made room for your throne. You don't bow. You don't beg. You rise. You reign. And darkness knows better than to test what heaven has refined. Stop analyzing the attack like it was personal. It wasn't about your current position. It was a preemptive strike against your rising power. If you were insignificant, why did the storm wait until your elevation to form? Why didn't they come for you when you were still hidden, still unsure, still adjusting? Because even your stillness sent a signal. The moment you stopped chasing noise and started cultivating power, every stronghold that once relied on your silence felt the earth shift beneath them. Spiritual warfare isn't just chaos, it's coded intel. The enemy doesn't launch attacks against people wandering aimlessly. He moves against those gaining traction. Why do you think Jesus was led into the wilderness right after his public confirmation in Matthew 3? Immediately after heaven said, "This is my beloved Son." The enemy responded with a desert. The affirmation triggered warfare, not because Jesus was weak, but because he was dangerous. Could your current pressure be the result of your heaven-backed identity being exposed? Let's talk about betrayal. Why did they lie? Twist your words. Exile you from circles you once bled for. The better question is, what did your presence threaten that made false narratives more comfortable than truth? Your elevation disrupted their illusions, and because they couldn't contain you, they tried to contaminate you. But here's what they didn't calculate. Pressure doesn't break the chosen, it births them. Romans 8:37 reminds us, "No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." You weren't just built to survive the attacks, you were wired to reverse them. That's why you didn't just endure, you evolved. They sent chaos and you built clarity. They threw isolation and you constructed intimacy with heaven. They deployed fear and you rewired your entire nervous system to recognize warfare as a signal, not a sentence. Consider Nelson Mandela, who spent 27 years in prison, unbroken. When he emerged, he didn't seek revenge. He became the architect of reconciliation in a divided nation, he once said. "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it." His confinement didn't shrink him, it trained him. Could your own seasons of restraint be more strategic than you realized, Amanda Gorman? The young black poet who stood before the world at a presidential inauguration and declared hope with unwavering fire. She had battled speech impediments and self-doubt for years, but when her voice finally rose, it shook global rooms. Her attacks came early, not because of her weakness, but because of her weaponry. You've lived this, just like Mateo, a foster youth from Colombia who bounced between 8 families before 18. Each move was an attempt to break his spirit, but in college, he founded a mentoring network for displaced teens. When asked how he found the strength, he said, "Every door they slammed became wood for my bridge." Now he walks over what once tried to bury him. Or Naima, an art teacher in a Bronx middle school who faced years of bullying, ridicule, and budget cuts. But instead of quitting, she painted murals of resurrection, defiance, and grace. The hallway her enemies once mocked her in now carries her signature in stained glass color, because she turned rejection into revelation. You're like a lightning rod during a thunderstorm. It's not that you caused the chaos, but your presence drew the strike, because you carry the current. Power doesn't attract applause, it attracts resistance. But even the resistance becomes your revelation. Or like obsidian, the glass-like volcanic stone forged by sudden, violent heat. It's not soft, it's not subtle, it's forged in eruption, and it cuts deeper than steel. Even the way oak trees survive fire speaks to you. Their bark thickens with every blaze, creating a natural armor. And still they grow taller. Have you noticed how every season of attack left something stronger in you, instead of something missing? That's because you weren't the target. The future you, the unfiltered, awakened, untamed version of you, was. The enemy feared what you might become if you ever stopped asking, "Why me?" and started declaring, "Try me." And now that your power has been activated, they're scrambling, because what was once potential has become presence. So, chosen one, don't let attacks shake your confidence. Let them reveal it. You weren't being punished, you were being positioned, and now the very war that was sent to stop you has become your evidence. You're not under attack. You're under recognition. You didn't lose. You ignited. The most dangerous thing isn't having no power. It's having it and doing nothing with it. You weren't lied to when they said you were chosen. They just hoped you'd never activate it. Have you ever wondered how many battles you lost? Not because you were outmatched, but because you hesitated. You keep waiting for permission. But power doesn't beg for affirmation. It functions when it's released. A sword that stays sheathed never wins wars. A crown never worn means territory never governed. And you've been walking through life carrying enough spiritual voltage to rupture systems. And yet, you've been playing small, as if your presence needs clearance. What are you protecting by shrinking? And who benefits when your power stays dormant? It's not humility. It's spiritual amnesia. Remember Moses at the burning bush. He kept telling God he wasn't ready. Not eloquent enough. Not the right choice. But in Exodus 4:2, God asked him, "What is that in your hand? A staff? Simple, ordinary, yet in God's timing. That staff split seas, swallowed serpents, and overthrew empires. The miracle wasn't in the object. It was in obedience. Could your delay be the only thing standing between you and the supernatural outcomes you were born to trigger? Nadia Murad, a Yazidi survivor of genocide and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, didn't ask for a platform. She was trafficked, silenced, stripped of dignity. But when she rose, she didn't just speak, she legislated. Her power didn't come from training. It came from truth weaponized, she said. My silence was their weapon. My voice became mine. Are you still handing your power to fear by not using your voice? Or, worse, your decisions? You don't need a grand announcement to be dangerous. Armin, a quiet janitor in a psychiatric facility outside Istanbul. For years, no one noticed him, until patients started showing signs of calm only around him. Turns out, he'd been praying, listening, speaking words of life into the most broken. He didn't post about it. He didn't wait to be seen. He just activated what was inside. That's what makes power unstoppable. It moves even when no one applauds. And it's not always action that activates power. Sometimes it's finally deciding. Like when Elijah stopped hiding in the cave and stood up, 1 Kings 19:15. Not because fear was gone, but because purpose got louder. Could it be your most dangerous power isn't your voice, but your choice? The world isn't waiting for your talent. It's trembling at the thought of your clarity. Every delay, every "I'm not ready," becomes a foothold for the forces that want to keep you neutralized. But you weren't placed here to blend in. You were designed to displace darkness. The moment you step into the fullness of who you are, rooms rearrange, systems shake, and lies unravel. Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." But what most don't know is that during his early years, he was ousted from the very company he started. He returned with more focus and created the most revolutionary designs in history, not because he gained more talent, but because he stopped hesitating. Can you see now how power misdirected leads to defeat? But power activated rewrites empires, Celine. A young woman from Bogota who was mocked for being too intense in college. She quietly built an online trauma recovery platform that now reaches 80,000 users a month. She didn't fight back. She just executed. Her power wasn't in her personality. It was in her follow-through. You are like geothermal energy, buried, pressurized, seemingly dormant beneath the surface. But when released, it heats entire regions, fuels nations, and cannot be contained, or like wild mustard seeds in the wilderness, ignored, overlooked. But the moment they activate, they take over entire fields with unstoppable force. Isn't that what's been building inside of you? Force not for performance, but for possession. They didn't fear your silence. They feared what your silence meant, that you were calculating, aligning, anchoring. Because once you activate what's in you, it's too late for them to prepare. You don't need to ask anymore. This is your green light. This is your atmosphere-shifting moment. So, chosen one, stop letting hesitation steal territory meant for your voice. Stop waiting for fear to leave. Move anyway. Power isn't proven by noise. It's confirmed by movement. And the most terrifying move you can make right now is to finally use what's been sitting inside you all along. Don't ever mistake belief for naivety. Don't let their scoffing fool you. It's not the noise of the crowd that shifts destiny. It's the internal yes you whisper when no one claps. Have you ever noticed that the ones who seem the most unstoppable aren't always the strongest? They're the most convinced. Chosen one. Belief is the detonator. It's not volume that terrifies darkness. It's certainty. You've been taught to see belief as abstract, emotional, soft. But what if I told you? Belief is one of heaven's sharpest technologies. Hebrews 11:1 defines it clearly. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That means belief isn't intangible. It's architecture in motion. It's the invisible scaffold under miracles. Look at David. Before the stone flew, before the giant fell, there was belief. That quiet, audacious, unshakable certainty in his gut that God had already delivered the victory. He didn't need a sword to feel qualified. He believed, and the entire battlefield adjusted to that frequency. Can you feel your battlefield shifting too? Not because you fought harder, but because you finally believed louder. Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks, grew up in a housing project, no legacy, no investors. Just believed that the world could slow down over a cup of coffee, he said. In life, You can't have everything, but you can have anything if you believe in it enough. Now, billions carry his vision in their hands every morning. What about you? What's your belief been quietly building while others were too loud to notice? And what about Reina, a woman in rural Chile who was told she'd never run a business because she couldn't read until age 16? At 30, she opened a co-op for single mothers making organic textiles. When asked how she made it through the shame, she said, "They taught me to hide my dreams. I believed in them anyway." That's belief in motion, silent but seismic. Belief isn't a whisper in the dark. It's the sound of locked doors cracking open. It's what moves the Red Sea. It's what opened prison doors for Peter in Acts 12. He was asleep, chained between guards, and still the angel came. Because belief didn't need noise. It needed surrender, and surrender, when paired with belief, creates divine jailbreaks. You've seen people with less talent rise while the gifted hesitated. You've watched doubted souls outrun the endorsed. That's not favoritism. It's force. Belief is magnetic. It draws favor, rearranges rooms, causes time itself to bend. That's why your energy unsettles people who can't control it. What can they do with someone who believes even when it hurts? Thalia, a soft-spoken girl in Johannesburg, was laughed at for sketching fashion on cardboard scraps. She never fought back. She just kept creating. Today, her designs are featured in New York and Milan. She said, "I didn't chase the runway. I chased my rhythm." That's what belief does. It sinks you to a frequency no critic can cancel. You're like iron, reacting to a magnetic field. Your belief draws alignment. Or like sequoia seeds, which can only germinate through fire. Heat activates their destiny. Belief works the same way. The more pressure you're under, the more potent your release becomes. Or think of glaciers slow moving, silent, yet capable of shaping continents. No one sees them coming. But once they move, nothing is left the same. Could it be your belief is just now beginning to glide through the landscape of your life, reshaping everything silently but permanently? And here's the twist. The enemy hoped you'd never discover. Belief isn't just about what you receive, it's about what you initiate. Jesus said in Matthew 21:22, "If you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer." But he didn't say, "Wait to believe." He said, "Believe, then receive." Your belief isn't responding to outcomes, it's authoring them. So now, you must decide, will you let fear keep editing the story? Or will you pick up the pen of belief and finish what heaven started in you? Stop waiting to feel ready. Belief is readiness. Stop waiting for the room to approve. Belief builds its own platform. This isn't wishful thinking. This is warfare. And belief is the sword in your hand, the code in your DNA, the roar behind your stillness. The universe doesn't move for opinions, it moves for conviction. So, light the match. Chosen one, you're not speaking hope, you're releasing heat. You're not asking permission, you're changing the laws around you. Let your belief do what your voice doesn't have to. It already knows the way forward. Walk like the outcome is finished. Stand like the timeline has shifted, because it has. And it started the moment you finally believed. You weren't built to operate on noise. You were built to operate on connection. And when that line between you and your source goes quiet, not because of peace, but because of neglect, everything begins to fray. How many battles have you walked into unaware, simply because you forgot to check the status of your own soul? Chosen one. Living without spiritual alignment is like trying to fight a war without a weapon. Brave, but fatal. It's subtle, the way it starts. A missed moment of solitude. A skipped prayer. A day filled with everyone else's voice but your own. And before long, you begin to operate from memory, not revelation, from momentum, not meaning, from habits, not hearing. That's how the enemy doesn't need to attack you. He just needs to distract you. And when distraction becomes your default, deception becomes your direction. Jesus often withdrew to pray, not because he was weak, but because he was wise. Luke 5:16 says, "But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." He knew something we too often forget. Power doesn't come from presence alone. It comes from presence with purpose. Could it be that your burnout isn't from doing too much, but from doing too much without spiritual recalibration? Thomas Merton, the Trappist monk and writer, once wrote, "We are not at peace with others because we are not at peace with ourselves. And we are not at peace with ourselves because we are not at peace with God." His life in solitude wasn't an escape. It was preparation. He influenced generations not by noise, but by depth. Your stillness can have the same impact if you let it sharpen you. Have you noticed how the most distracted seasons in your life were also the most chaotic? How the small decisions you made while spiritually dry had the highest cost? That's no accident. The enemy doesn't always storm the gates. Sometimes he whispers through unchecked thoughts, unfiltered feelings, unguarded fatigue. What rhythms have you abandoned that once kept your discernment razor sharp? Like Rena, a mother of 4 in Nairobi who used to journal her prayers daily at 4:00 a.m. When life got louder, she stopped. It seemed harmless, until she began reacting instead of responding, fearing instead of trusting. One night, after weeks of anxiety attacks, she returned to her chair and prayed. No miracles happened that night, but peace did, and peace is power's first language. You are like a bowstring. If not reset, it loses tension, or like a compass too close to static, direction gets warped. Real strength isn't just movement, it's accurate movement. And accuracy only comes from stillness. When's the last time you heard your own soul speak louder than your schedule? Even Elijah, the prophet of fire, found himself lost in the wilderness until a whisper brought him back. 1 Kings 19:12 reminds us, after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire came a gentle whisper. Could it be that the signal you're waiting for has been speaking in whispers all along? Serena Williams, one of the greatest athletes in history, once shared that her rituals of stillness, prayer, meditation, silence were more important than her training. The match is won before I step on the court. She said, what if the battles you're facing now aren't lost in the heat, but in the lack of preparation? And consider Ahmad, a former underground DJ from Berlin who disappeared from the nightlife scene. Rumors said he burned out. The truth: he found silence. Now, he hosts healing sound immersions for trauma survivors. The same man who used to distort rhythms now aligns hearts. He says little, but what he carries shakes rooms. You are like quartz crystal, buried beneath layers of sediment, without pressure and stillness. It remains indistinct, but when refined, it stores energy and amplifies vibration. Or like snow on mountain peaks, quiet on the surface, but essential to the entire water system below. Don't confuse stillness with stagnation. Stillness is spiritual voltage. So, chosen one, pause, not to retreat, but to recalibrate. The enemy doesn't need to defeat you if he can simply keep you disconnected. Your solitude is not weakness, it's surveillance. It's where you download divine intelligence for the season ahead. That's why silence unsettles those who live off chaos. Because when you get quiet, you become unpredictable. When you become predictable, you become vulnerable. But when you become unreadable, you become unshakable. The chosen don't stall. They don't stand frozen, waiting for skies to split open or voices to echo from clouds. They move, not because everything is certain, but because their spirit won't let them sit still. Have you ever felt that quiet urgency? The one that keeps tapping your chest even when logic says wait? That's not impatience. That's divine readiness, refusing to be ignored. Obedience was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be catalytic. Chosen one. Signs are for those who doubt. But you've already seen too much to pretend you're unsure. The vision didn't arrive in fragments. It came in fire. And once the fire touches your bones, you can't return to silence. In Genesis 12, God told Abraham, "Go from your country to the land I will show you." No map, no destination, just a call and a command to move. Abraham didn't wait for clarity. He created it with every step. That's the kind of obedience that births nations. Could it be that your delay has nothing to do with lack of signs and everything to do with fear of walking without them? Rosa Parks didn't wait for permission to disrupt a system. She sat down when the world said, "Stand," she said later. "I had no idea history was being made. I was just tired of giving in." Her obedience wasn't announced. It was embodied, and it changed the world. Are you still waiting for conditions to feel divine before doing what God already confirmed in your spirit, Noel? A quiet high school student in the Philippines who kept dreaming of building homes for the homeless. No money, no platform, just an idea and a will. At 19, he started collecting scrap wood with his bare hands. Today, his initiative has built 84 shelters. When asked how he knew when to start, he said, "I started before I was ready, and readiness met me on the road." That's what obedience looks like: messy faith, clean fruit. The ones who activate the miraculous are rarely the ones with the clearest map. They're the ones who walk anyway. So what are you still waiting for? One more sign? Or just permission to stop hiding your power under cautiousness? You already know what's in you. And deep down, you also know the door was never locked. It's been waiting for you to push. James chapter 2:26 says, "Faith without works is dead." Inaction is the slowest form of self-sabotage. You don't need to be perfect to move. You need to be positioned. Your posture of trust is louder than your fear of failure. And trust isn't passive. It walks while the fog still covers the road. Howard Thurman, theologian and mentor to Martin Luther King Jr., once said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. That aliveness is the sign. That burn in your chest is the green light. That unrest when you try to settle. It's heaven disrupting your comfort zone." Think of Amara, a widow from Lisbon who felt prompted to start a shelter for domestic abuse victims after her own healing journey. Everyone told her to take her time, but she couldn't shake the urgency. She launched with no staff, no money, no blueprint, just obedience. Within 6 months, women were lining up at her door because obedience opens what planning never could. You are like the plover bird, small but relentless, flying across continents with no GPS, just instinct and alignment with magnetic fields no human sees. That's what obedience is. Direction that doesn't come from sight, but from soul. Or like lava beneath the crust, pressurized, unseen, but always moving toward eruption. It doesn't wait for permission from the surface. It simply obeys its nature. And when it emerges, landscapes are redefined. Could your next act of obedience be the eruption that transforms territory? You're not waiting for clarity. You're postponing consequence. And that delay is costing you dominion. The longer you sit, the more your momentum rusts, the more you hesitate. The louder fear becomes. But, chosen one, when did you forget that your movement is the message, that your motion releases miracles? So stop overthinking. Obedience is not submission to fear. It's alignment with fire. You're not asking for signs anymore. You're realizing you were sent as one. Heaven doesn't always give green lights. It gives instruction. And your obedience is the ignition that makes the earth shake in response. Move now. Build it. Start it. Speak it. Walk toward it. This is your moment. Not because the path is easy, but because the path was made for you. You are the storm they hoped would pass, but now you've learned to direct it. Fear is loud for a reason. It knows its only weapon is illusion. It screams so you'll stall, lies so you'll stay, shakes you so you won't shift. But have you ever noticed the moments you feared the most were often the ones that changed you the deepest? Because you walked anyway, chosen one. Fear doesn't vanish, it's conquered. And that conquest doesn't happen in retreat. It happens in movement. The great deception is thinking you must wait until you're fearless before you act. But what if bravery was never the absence of fear, but the rebellion against it? That's the terrain where your most dangerous power lives, not behind comfort, but beyond confrontation. Because when you step forward with trembling hands, heaven sends reinforcement. Joshua was commanded to enter Canaan, a land filled with giants. But in Joshua 1:9, God said, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." God didn't say, Wait until you're unafraid, he said. Go anyway. Could it be your next level is waiting on the other side of the fear you've been negotiating with Oprah Winfrey? Now, a global force of wisdom, healing, and influence, spoke publicly of trembling behind the scenes during her early TV years. Unsure if she belonged, yet she showed up. Her voice shook, but her vision didn't. She once said, "The thing you fear most has no power. Your fear of it is what has the power." Every step she took, while afraid, built an empire. Could that same template be written in your bones, Hamza? A boy from Lebanon who stuttered so severely he refused to speak in class. At 15, he signed up for a youth oratory competition. Not because he was brave, but because he was tired of being silent. He stuttered through the entire speech, but when he finished, the room stood, not because he was perfect, but because he walked through what should have shut him down. That's power not polished, but undeniable. Fear disguises itself as logic. It'll tell you. It's just not the right time. But how many destinies died waiting for timing that never came? How many voices stayed silent waiting for a feeling that never arrived? What breakthrough are you postponing just because fear still speaks louder than your obedience? Power is forged mid-motion. You discover it by doing, not by analyzing. David didn't stand before Goliath fearless. He stood anointed. An anointing outruns emotion. In 1 Samuel 17:48 it says, "As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. He didn't freeze. He ran toward what scared others." That's how fear gets broken under your feet, not in your head. Viola Davis, award-winning actress, once spoke about growing up in poverty and shame. She said she walked into audition rooms drenched in fear, but she kept walking. "I'm just going to step into the room like I own it." She'd repeat to herself. That posture didn't erase fear. It defied it, and in doing so, it made room for legacy. Jade, a florist in rural Japan, was terrified of starting over after her divorce. She'd been told she was too old, too broken, but she opened a flower shop anyway, not because the fear disappeared, but because the silence had become louder than the fear. Today, her tiny shop is a refuge for women across 3 prefectures. Power didn't come first. Movement did. You are like the wild stallion, flinching at first, eyes darting, breath rapid. But once it trusts the wind, nothing outruns it, or the lightning bolt, formed in silence, released in risk, and capable of igniting entire skies with one leap. That's the kind of force living inside you. It doesn't wait. It erupts. What version of you is still locked behind fear's gate, waiting to be called out? What brilliance is still dormant because you've mistaken the presence of fear for a sign to stop chosen one? The fear isn't your barrier, it's your threshold. You've been mistaking the shaking for a sign to sit down. But trembling doesn't mean weakness. It means the threshold is real. The bigger the quake, the closer the breakthrough. You don't walk through fear because it's easy. You walk through it because it's the only thing standing between you and the next version of yourself. So now, stop stalling. Stop negotiating with fear as if it deserves a seat at your decision table. You were never meant to feel ready. You were meant to move anyway. The enemy banked on your silence. But you're not just walking through fear. You're breaking its entire economy. Walk even if your legs tremble. Speak even if your voice cracks. Move even if you feel unqualified. Because power doesn't wait for perfection. It waits for obedience. And once you walk through the fire, you'll remember who you were before fear was ever given a name. Standing still is not always surrender, but sometimes it's sabotage dressed as safety. You keep calling it patience, but is it truly divine timing or disguised avoidance? How many times have you labeled hesitation as discernment when deep down it was just fear wearing strategist's clothes, chosen one? You've been entrusted with something the world cannot contain, but heaven will not force. You must activate it. Stillness in its healthy form is alignment, but when it lingers past its purpose, it becomes stagnation, and stagnation steals time more efficiently than warfare. Even rivers rot when they stop moving. What are you allowing to rot within you while you wait for a green light that was already embedded in your spirit? Ecclesiastes 11:4 says, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap." Waiting for perfect conditions is spiritual procrastination. Destiny doesn't wait for weather reports. It rides storms, and storms only part for those bold enough to walk into them without a map. Frida Kahlo, the iconic Mexican painter, once said, "I am my own muse." Paralyzed in her youth, rejected by critics, tormented by pain. Yet she painted not because the moment felt right, but because the fire inside her refused to be silenced by delay. Her legacy was not born from stillness. It was born from defiance. What art, what message, what movement are you holding hostage under the false name of not yet? And there's Nico, a former street cleaner in Marseille, who spent 10 years dreaming of opening a center for youth after watching teens fall into gangs. He had no money, no degree, no approval. But one day, he simply walked into an abandoned space and began to clean. That first move, small, uncertain, uncelebrated, was his activation point. Now, his center serves over 700 boys annually. The shift began the moment he refused to stand still. How much glory has been forfeited simply because the chosen one wouldn't move? How many divine downloads have dried up in journals, never spoken, never started? The truth is, movement doesn't guarantee ease, but stillness without obedience guarantees erosion. You weren't designed to wait forever. You were designed to respond. In Exodus 14:15, when the Israelites stood trapped between Pharaoh's army and the sea, God didn't comfort them with delay. He said, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Movement didn't come after the miracle, it caused it. Could the parting of your own Red Sea be waiting on your next decision? Angela Bassett, the award-winning actress, once said, "Don't wait for the stars to align. Reach up, grab one, and realign them yourself." Her rise wasn't paved with perfect timing. It was pushed forward by persistent motion. She didn't sit still. She created waves. Think of Amia, a woman in Trinidad who spent years thinking of launching a sustainable farming co-op for single mothers. The vision never left her. But fear kept telling her, not now. One morning, she woke up, walked to an empty lot, planted 3 seeds, and invited 2 other women. Today, over 100 families are fed through what began as a single. Trembling, yes. She didn't need a business plan. She needed movement. You're like the tectonic plate, underground slow. But when activated, capable of shifting the shape of continents, or the wild salmon who swims against the current, not because it's safe, but because instinct demands it. Stillness is not your home. Obedience is. So here's the truth you must face. You're not stuck. You're stalling. The vision you carry wasn't given to inspire you. It was given to employ you, to send you, to move through you. And heaven isn't waiting for a second opinion. It's waiting for your motion. Stop saying, maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow is never guaranteed to hold the kind of power today does. You've been standing still in the name of wisdom. But wisdom obeys when the soul says move. You already have the word. You already have the fire. What you're missing is the walk. So, chosen one, this is your activation point. Not when you feel worthy, not when it's safe. Now, you weren't called to spectate. You were called to shift atmospheres. The door won't open until your hand touches the handle. And the moment you move, even slightly, the entire landscape will adjust in your favor. They didn't think you'd rise. They expected you to stall forever. But now, your stillness has turned to strategy. Your strategy is turning into motion. And your motion is about to rewrite the very timeline they thought was sealed. Because when the chosen move, nothing stays the same. Chosen one. Everything you just walked through in every chapter of this series wasn't merely encouragement. It was a divine visitation, a holy unveiling, a courtroom announcement in the spirit realm that your dormant power has officially been recalled to the front lines. You're no longer allowed to sit in the shadows of your own potential. You can no longer pretend you don't carry the capacity to shake systems. You can't go back to silence and spiritual sleepwalking after this. Heaven has already marked you as active, and now you're face to face with the truth. Power was never waiting to show up. Power was waiting for your agreement. You've been standing on the edge for so long, telling yourself you're just being cautious. But hesitation has expired. Delay is no longer wisdom. It has become spiritual sabotage. Every battle you thought was just an attack was actually a test to see if you would believe the anointing on your life before others did. The enemy was never afraid of your pain. They were afraid that pain would wake you up. And now that you're awake, the world should tremble. Because when a chosen one wakes up, the entire frequency of creation adjusts. You weren't chosen to be famous. You were chosen to be formidable, not celebrated, but catalytic. Your presence isn't decoration in the room. It is transformation. You were called to change rooms, shift atmospheres, disturb systems that pretend to be holy, and walk in an obedience so sharp it becomes a weapon. You were born to remind the earth that heaven still places fire in human vessels. So let this be your divine permission slip. Stop waiting. Start walking. Stop asking for signs. You are the sign. Stop apologizing for your power. You were born to carry it with reverence. There is no greater deception than a chosen one convinced they're ordinary. You are not. There is no heavier grief than a mantle unlifted. Lift it. There is no greater warfare than the soul of a chosen one wrestling with a calling they were always meant to command. Command it. Your activation isn't coming. It just happened. Right now. Luke 10:19. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. So, walk like you've been handed the deed to the territory. Pray like heaven is leaning forward. Move like every step shifts history. This isn't a test anymore. It's a transition. And when chosen ones finally choose themselves, nothing in hell can hold the timeline hostage any longer. If your spirit was stirred by this word, don't let it stop with you. Like this message, if it broke chains inside you. Comment below and let me know what part of your spirit got reawakened. Share this with someone who's been secretly carrying power, but forgot how to activate it. Subscribe not just to this channel, but to the deeper call on your life. And once you've subscribed, click that bell to stay in sync with every word sent from heaven. And to each of you, whether you've supported through a super thanks, a prayer, a whisper in the comments, or even silent agreement behind a screen, I see you. I honor your presence. You are not forgotten. You are not small. You are a gatekeeper, a watchman, a carrier of heaven's blueprints. Thank you for walking this journey with me. May your discernment grow sharper. May your boundaries grow bolder. May your territory expand beyond language. May your name be echoed in rooms you've never stepped in, but your obedience already reached. May every delay now become a divine acceleration. And may your most dangerous power, your obedience, your clarity, your silence, your strategy, your belief speak louder than every word spoken against you. You are chosen. You are marked. You are moving, and nothing will ever be the same again. Grace and glory to you. Beloved, we're just getting started.